myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. It's Tuesday night. I hope you've all had a nice day out in the sunshine. Those of you who are looking after the kids at half term, I know I certainly have. And it's a big welcome, as always, on a Tuesday night, Liam Kennedy. But a special welcome to a friend of the show and somebody who's getting a bit more sun than we are at the moment, Lee Clark. How are you, Lee?
I'm all right, Steve. Okay, Liam.
Good stuff.
Right.
Yeah, good to see you as well, Liam. And yeah, I mean, hey, this is great. These pictures made me smile enormously when I saw you getting announced, and I saw you back on the training pitch, Lee. And you know, just to see you enjoying life as a football manager, which is what you were cut out to be when you retired, mate. And you know, obviously from my point of view, just over the moon to see it happening again, mate. And it seems to be going well. So for those people who've been living in a cave for the last few months, where in the world are you, and who are you managing?
Yeah, I'm in Sudan at the moment. I'm managing Al Merrikh, which is one of the biggest clubs in Africa, and also, you know, we're competing the African Champions League, competing the Arab Champions League, obviously the Sudan League, and our big rivals in that's a club called Al Hilal. They have appointed at the same time as me Richard Forminska, who was Jose Mourinho's number 2 at all these English clubs. So he come in at a similar time. We beat them in the first game of the season last weekend, 2-0 at their ground. It's a huge derby. The only downside for us was there's no fans, because they get 35,000 league games and Champions League, and we fill what's known as our Red Castle, the home stadium. We get 43,000. So I had the experience of the lead up to the game. We train at the stadium, of allowing the fans in, and there was about 400 or 500 fans came in, and the noise they generated was unreal. So I was just gutted there was no fans allowed in the stadium for the match, really. But it's nip and tuck. We're a point ahead of them. They play tomorrow afternoon and we play tomorrow night. So it's probably similar to 95-96 when Newcastle and Man United were following each other around. Hopefully it's a better outcome this time.
You're checking the team list for Cantona, aren't you?
Yeah, well, it's the opposition, Hilal. They do have a fantastic striker. His younger brother actually plays for me at Merrikh, so I'm trying everything to stop him being on form. He scored 4. They won 4-0 in the last game, Hilal, and he scored all 4 of the goals. So we're trying to prevent it. But you know, it's a big rivalry. The two teams produce most of the players for the national team, who are on a big wave of success. They qualified for the African Nations in Cameroon for the first time in a decade. I was at the game. They beat South Africa over 2 legs, and so Sudan football's looking up. It's you know, it's the passion of the support is unbelievable of the fans. I walk around Khartoum where I'm based here, and they just, you know, they want to talk football, but obviously my Arabic is not too great to be honest with you.
Now, I was going to ask this: is Lee Clark fluent now in Arabic, or are those people out there now fluent in Geordie?
There's a bit of both, because one of their words is "I," which means yes, which is part of the Geordie dialect. Shukran, thank you. So just various little things like that I'm picking up. But I've got a couple of good guys. A fitness coach of mine who's from Egypt originally, but he's been based in the States for the last 10 years before I brought him here. He obviously speaks good English and obviously Arabic, and an analyst who's studied in London for 7 years in a university. So they help with the language. There's no issues with the language barrier. That's fine. So, and I'm enjoying it.
If you can work in Blythe, you can work anywhere, Lee. I'm only joking, Blythe fans. Only joking. But yeah, I mean,
don't start a pile on this, Steve. Come on.
the heat's mad, guys. We trained at 8 o'clock this morning.
Wow.
And we're probably hitting the early 40s, and it's probably about 48, 49 now. We trained yesterday afternoon. It was 49, and it was it was tough. But you know, my lads are used to that. We just come out of a training camp in Cairo in Egypt. We were there for 3 weeks, and because it dropped a few degrees in temperature, it was still high 20s, early 30s. My lads thought it was cold, so
they're turning up with cardigans at them, and you're like,
absolutely. It's a different ball game for me. But
what's
no,
the
thoroughly
food like?
enjoyed it.
What's the
Sorry?
food like?
Yeah, fine. You know, everything's good. Just moved into an apartment. I've been in a hotel. Just moved into an apartment a couple of days ago. So everything's good. You know, the football's coming thick and fast. We have a little bit of a break because there's an international meet up after these games on tomorrow. But and then they'll come thick and fast because the season meant due to finish in August, but we've still got 13 league games to play. And as I said, we've got the start of the Arab Champions League to consider as well, which we don't know our opponent yet. I'm hoping it's a nice team in Dubai somewhere so I can have a nice little break on the back of it as well. So, yeah, you know, it's something different. It was a challenge I wanted in terms of working overseas. I always talked about that. I had to turn an opportunity down a couple of years ago when I'd accepted the job and agreed terms. And on the day I was meant to travel, before that took poorly, unfortunately, so I wasn't prepared to go. And then this came about, and I'd done the due diligence. And you know what? It could open some new doors for us for my future in coaching and management. I mean, one club we played in our group of the Champions League was Al Ahly, the Egyptian Giants, who are basically the Real Madrid of African football. They've won the Champions League 9 times. And they get 80,000 every week. It's absolutely chocker. And we played them, and you know, we had a fantastic result, 2-2. They scored in injury time, but they're now in the semi-final of the competition. We left at the group stages. I was only in charge for 2 games. There was only 2 games left in the group, so looking forward to getting back into that. That's why we need to win the league again to qualify for that. But lots to look forward to. And the players, as you can imagine, very respectful, very humble. Really work hard, try to improve, and we've seen a real good improvement since we've took over. What, 3 months ago?
Liam,
Lee,
I suppose you've got any questions?
Sorry.
Go on, Liam. Yeah, go on, man.
I was going to say, do you feel like it's added more strings to your bow, sort of going over there and sort of settling into a different culture, different players, different management, all that kind of thing? Has it made you a better manager?
I'm sure it will, Liam. Yeah, of course. I think it's going to be great to put in my CV to do this, you know. And as I said, who knows around this part of the world, the doors that it might open for us in the future. You know, English football and UK football's becoming quite difficult to manage. You don't get a lot of time, and the demands are sometimes a little bit unrealistic to what you're dealing with. So it's just seeing I've had, you know, numerous agents on from the UK of English players and British players who are interested in coming over. So that's something to consider at the end of the season. You know, there is some rules and regs. We're only allowed 5 overseas players, and in the league we have to play 1 under-20 player and 1 under-23 player in the starting 11 to help their young national teams. So they have to obviously be Sudanese, and if I replace them, I have to replace them with their age group. So for the full duration of the game, I'll have 1 under-20 player and 1 under-23 player, which isn't a problem for me. I'm a big believer in young players, but I think it's a great idea going forward in terms of helping the young international teams. It can cause issues, and it does, but you know, it's something you've got to do. I mean, we've lost we have like 4 on our books, so you'd have 2 playing possibly and 2 on the bench, or you might even play all 4 and then take 2 off, whatever. You just got to have 2 on the pitch all the time. We're currently got 2 of those injured, so I've had to call up 3 youth players who I haven't really seen much of, just in training, and we're probably going to have 2 of them on the bench tomorrow. And if one or 2 of those younger players get injured, they'll have to come into the fray. So making their debut, really, you know, with not a lot of experience behind them, but it's great. It's great for. I think that's why there's been improvement in the national team. Also, my goalkeeper has to be a Sudan national as well, in terms of, so I kind of bring an overseas goalkeeper in, but I can have 5 overseas players in the group.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Great stuff. Well, anyone's got questions for Lee about his new job, then feel free to get them in. We do know, obviously, usually on a Tuesday, it's all about the takeover and transfers. We will come to a little bit of that. I do want to get the lads' thoughts on the season gone with Newcastle. We're doing that all week with the different folks that we have on the shows. So, player of the season, Lee, 12th place. Great finish for Newcastle. After, makes you wonder what we're all worried about 6-7 weeks ago. But that's football. We know it can happen. And credit to Steve Bruce and the rest of the coaching staff and the players for getting them into that 12th place at the end of the season. But who was your player of the season, Lee?
Yeah, well, just to reiterate what you said there, Steve, the finish to the season just shows you if you put a good run together in the Premier League, it's a terrific thing to do. And as you just said there, credit to the players and the staff and the manager for coming through that awful period, and to get a run like that and to finish 12th. I think 4 or 5 weeks before that, it was whether they were going to finish 3rd or 4th bottom. That was the question. So to get that after the run, brilliant for the season. Not for what the club should be. You know my thoughts on that. Should always be looking to challenge to get into Europe, etc. But for what the beliefs are of the ownership and the ambitions of the ownership and how the season was going, 12th is a positive outcome, really, but not where the club should or want to be. In terms of the players, I've probably plumbed for 2. I plumbed for Carl Darlow at first. I think if you take away some of his performances in the early part of the season, that he made games that were losing into draws and draws into wins by some of the saves. I remember the game at the new Tottenham Stadium where he was inspired. There could have been 5 or 6 before half time if it wasn't down to him. And I think, if Carl hadn't been in the form he was in with Dubravka being injured, there could have been, by the time Dubravka come back, probably no exaggeration to say there probably could have been anything between 7 and 10 points worse off than they were, which would have probably put them in the bottom 3. And then once you're in there, it is always a struggle to get out. So I think what he done cannot be underestimated, and not be looked upon, because I think it was fantastic. He'd be frustrated now. Dubravka back in. It's difficult. I remember being on the coaching staff. Steve Harper came in for Shea. She had one of his very few injuries, and Steve came in and was brilliant. And I remember having the staff meeting when Shea came back fit, and Glenn asked all the staff about their opinions if who should be in goal. I went for Steve just for the fact that he was in the team and he was doing well. And what message would it send out to Steve and other players if they got in and then someone, come back fit and you were out? Was I saying that Shea Given wasn't world class and probably one of the best, if not the best keeper to play for Newcastle? Of course I wasn't. But I was always a big believer in, someone's bad luck allows someone else in. And, and that was something that happened with Darlow. A couple of results later, I think Steve and his staff must have had the thought process of going back for their number one and a keeper who's top quality in Dubravka. I felt obviously you did have to feel a little bit sorry for Darlow after what he'd done. And then the other one is he didn't hit massive heights all the time, but for someone to do what he does, which is the hardest part of the game, is probably Callum Wilson with a completely different team when the guy's in it. Where he is a goal scorer. They're very rare. They're very rare. And for a club that was in our position, to have one who scores on a regular basis like that was a big factor for us. One thing we'll have to do is try and get rid of these niggly injuries that he picks up, because we do need to have him out on the pitch more often than we do. But I think for his level of performance when he played, the Everton game comes to mind. I think that was one of his games when you think that's him at his best, what he does, making those great runs, working the line, spinning down the sides of centre-backs, been a great outlet for the through pass or the diagonal pass over the top. And works ever so hard for the team as well. And he scores all kinds of goals. I like him. He scores, you know, he's got the courage to take the penalties. He scores headers from inside the 6-yard box. He'll score from outside the box. And he's got that knack of what normal goal scorers have. He's not frightened to miss chances. He's not frightened to miss the sitter and go back a couple of minutes later in exactly the same position and be there. So in terms of what he's brought to the team, I would say a player that, you know, when you're talking about player this season, people might define it on every time he's played, he's been brilliant. Has there been an outfield player that's done that this year? Probably not. I mean, even the other exciting player, St. Maxim, has had his ups and downs as well, hasn't he? But, you know, probably them too. But if he was putting a, you know, as on the spot, I'd have to say Darlow, because, you know, who knows where we would have been if it hadn't been for him in the early to middle part of the season.
Great shout, Lee. Great shout. Liam, your player of the season, mate?
I can't really look too much past the second one that Lee said there as well. For me, it's Callum Wilson, head and shoulders. I just look at the games that he did play. You mentioned the injuries there, Lee, and I think if he played a full season, you're looking at a 20-goal-a-season striker. It's just a case of getting him out on the pitch as much as possible. I think it was maybe 25 games he played. If he played the full 38 games in the season, he'd definitely get 20 goals. Newcastle haven't really had many strikers like that over the last 10 to 15 years. So for me, it's got to be Callum Wilson. Honourable mentions for the likes of St. Maximin, the way he came back into the team and transformed things, but his consistency. There's a reason why he's at Newcastle United and isn't at a better club further up the division, is because of that consistency. He doesn't produce it over a full season. I think we've seen it the last time, at the end of last season, he was excellent. And we've seen it at the end of this season as well. But the bits in between aren't so good. He drifts in and out of things. And I wonder whether sometimes it's a mentality thing, because he's got everything. And when he wants it, and when he wants to play well, he can turn it on like that. So honourable mention for him. And I think you've got to have an honourable mention as well for Joe Willock as well. I think the way that he probably came in and scored goals that meant Newcastle United weren't worried about relegation for the last 6 weeks of the season. But if we're going over a full season, it's got to be Callum Wilson for me.
Okay, good stuff. Game of the season, Lee?
For me, it's got to be the result at Leicester in the performance against a team who were flying on that cup run, pushing for the Champions League. Outstanding manager and Brendan Rodgers, some terrific players, the way they played. You know, they've had some great results. And Newcastle won the game and thoroughly deserved it. The scoreline didn't flatter them at all. In fact, the scoreline in the end, the 4-2, probably flattered Leicester. Newcastle were outstanding on the night. Their counter-attacking game was absolutely played to perfection. The speed at which they attacked, the quality of their attacks. And when you put it up against the opposition, you know, because that was part of that great run that they've had at the end. No, I think you'd be struggling to find, you know, Leicester. I mentioned Everton earlier, that was probably up there. But when I put everything into consideration in terms of opponent, how well the opponent was playing at the time, you know, what they were challenging for and what Newcastle were looking to do, and to score 4 goals in any away game in the Premier League is very, very difficult. And against a team like that, and the way they did it, and they could have scored more, and their general performance from start to finish was outstanding.
Yep, same question to you, Liam. Game of the season for you?
I'm going to go slightly different. I know this is going to sound totally mad, because that Leicester game was absolutely incredible. To be 4-0 up at a side playing so well as Leicester, I mean, in the Champions League, well, almost in the Champions League and all that kind of thing. They've been probably one of the form teams in the last 3 or 4 years in the Premier League. Fantastic stuff. But I'm going to go for Southampton at home, just purely because of the absolute drama. I've rarely ever, for me, what it did was, it as a fan as well as a football writer, it kind of made us feel again. I felt the emotion in that second half of that game. I kicked every ball, headed every cross out. I mean, just the drama, the way that Newcastle United went down to 9 men at the end of the game. They were in cruise control at half time. You've seen Jeff Hendrick get needlessly sent off. Then it was panic stations when Ward-Prowse scored a fantastic free kick, and it was just hang on for dear life. Beyond that, Fabian Schär gets injured at the end. It was just one of those games. I remember I wasn't at the game myself. I was covering it from the office, and it's a good job there was nobody in there, because the air was blue. I was jumping up and down. Honestly, I was screaming when the final whistle went. So that for me was the game of the season, because it was just absolute raw emotion. And it came on the back of a really you know, we'd had a really rough run of games in the run up to that, apart from the Everton one. And it was getting really difficult to watch Newcastle United because it was grim every weekend. And just feeling that again, just that little bit of feeling coming back, ticks all the boxes for me.
Yeah, I would agree. There was some good games towards the end of the season. I think that's where most people's focus was, and I think the Leicester game, rightly so. I mean, especially where they finished. They won a trophy. Up until the last game of the season, they were chasing Champions League positions as well, and that was an outstanding performance all round. Even though we conceded those 2 late goals, it was it didn't take anything away from that performance at all. So I would agree with Lee on that one. Best signing and worst signing, Lee. I think again that's created a lot of talking points amongst not only supporters but the people who do this show. What was the best signing for you?
Well, I've already touched on it in Callum Wilson. When any team in any level of football, if they're going to be successful, need a goal scorer, need someone who does it on a regular basis. And Callum Wilson, for the price, I believe when we got him, was a great acquisition at a great price in the current market. And when he's played, he's proved that. As I said earlier, don't want to keep repeating myself, but just got to keep him fit, got to get him on the pitch, as Liam said, as often as we can. If we keep him fit for the full 38 games, then he's going to be a massive asset. You couple him with the players that we have around, if they can stay fit, and Maxim and Almiron, if they can be 1 or 2 additions to the top end of the pitch as well, I think, it's brilliant. I think you've seen the difference a goal scorer makes to Aston Villa. Ollie Watkins, you see what he's done at Villa. And it's the Villa have paid a bit more of a premium for him with him being a bit of a younger player, but Wilson's, got he's just as good as assets. He knows where the goal is, so I think he has to come out on top as the best. Something I don't like commenting on when you comment about individuals or the worst or whatever. But Jeff Hendricks has had a tough time, very tough time, and yes, I think probably one of the main factors for Jeff is he's not much different to the midfield players we already had at the club. Did we really need him? Has he just been brought in as a body? Has he just been brought in as a squad filler? So you've got the numbers. He was always he's always been part of a team that's been very hard working, both domestically and internationally, part of the Republic of Ireland, who in the international stage have this, thought process that they've got a real determination and work ethic about them, and they never give up. And he had that at Burnley as well. We need someone a little bit different in the midfield area, who we got later in the season, Joe Willock, who breaks from the middle and can score. We also could do, if we want to be greedy, add someone who has a bit of, the eye of a needle pass. Can be a bit more creative. I know Shelby's got that type of ammunition sometimes in his locker. If he doesn't consistently look for that Hollywood pass for 60, 70 yards, he could be the one who threads it through the eye of a needle down the sides for a Wilson or someone like that. In my opinion, we didn't need Jeff Hendricks, and I think that's worked against him. Probably a lot of the fans have become frustrated to think that as well. Why have we signed him? Because he's not any different to Sean Longstaff. If anything, young Matty's probably more dynamic, a bit more quicker around the pitch, gets round people quicker. So it was probably a signing, no fault of Jeff's, because Jeff's just come and done what he done at Burnley and does it for Republic of Ireland, and he has other flair players around him. And I think what Newcastle were looking for in midfield was someone with a bit of flair, the game changers. And I think that's what's worked against him, unfortunately. Okay,
good stuff. Liam, same question to you, mate.
I was going to say, before I come on to my best and worst, I think it'd be rude of us considering we've got Lee Clark here, one of the most naturally gifted midfielders ever to come through at Newcastle United. Can I ask your opinion, Lee, on on what you think of Matty Longstaff and Sean Longstaff, because on this show we have a lot of people come on, and there's a lot of doubters out there say they don't think either of them's good enough to play Premier League level. I'm not in that camp at all. I think both the lads, having seen them play in the youth teams as well, are fantastic footballers, very different footballers, but fantastic in their own right. So say, for example, Lee, you've been coming through at Newcastle before. If you see Newcastle sign your Matty Longstaff and you see a Jeff Hendricks sign, how does that make you feel?
Well, it makes you feel disappointed and angry, but what you've got to do, you've got to respond to that. And you've got to actually have the mentality of embarrassing the manager that he's been foolish in signing Jeff Hendrick, because you actually had someone better already in the club. Obviously, I know Sean very well. I gave him his first opportunity as a professional in terms of his loan up in Kilmarnock. So I've worked with him. I know what he's about. And you're absolutely spot on that him and Matty are completely different footballers, even though they both play centre midfield. Sean has got he has got the potential to be a box-to-box player who can get you the goal. Can he be as prolific as a Willock? I'm not too sure, because he's just took midfield goal scoring to a new level since he's been at Newcastle Willock, which is an outstanding what he's achieved. You know, to score field, it was an achievement for Shearer to do it. So for a midfield player to do it is phenomenal return. Matty, as I just touched upon earlier as well, is more of a little pocket rocket, gets in around you, shorter, quicker passes, 1-2s, give and goes, gets around the opponents, harries them, you know, snaps at their ankles, and then can hit the longer shot from deeper, i.e. his goal against Man United and stuff like that. So I think what they've got to do, we've got to refocus. It's been a tough season for them both. Certainly for Matty, hasn't seen a lot of game time, but Sean as well. They've got to refocus. They've got to think about the players that are around them, the opponents that they had. That was one of the things that drove me under Keegan. He was always signing player after player after player. And I seen off most of the challengers, you know, and I had to raise my game. I had to maybe play in a different way. I maybe, you know, had to do something different. And I think this is the crossroads Sean and Matty are at, what they want to do. Are they prepared to stay and fight? Are they, and then if they are, what they've got to do to make sure they're the number one pick alongside someone else in the midfield. But what they've got to basically do is get in that position where they embarrass the manager. That if he ever leaves them out, when they get in the team, they play that well, everyone's questioning the manager, why did you leave them out? That's what you want as a manager. You don't hide from that. You'd rather have that than 5 or 6 players keep playing poorly and people are questioning your judgment on your recruitment and etc. You want players who, when they get the opportunity, they put you under severe pressure. I say it when I've managed players all the time, give me the most difficult decision on a Saturday, because I can only pick 11, but I want about 18 or 19 players really who should be worthy of playing in the 11. One of my old managers who had a great saying, play yourself into my team and don't play yourself out. I don't drop you, you leave yourself out. And that's the way it is.
Yeah, good. Yeah, great stuff. Go on then. Have you had time to think? So,
I know I have. I was stalling, wasn't I? Because I wasn't quite sure. So I'm going to go for Joe Willock's signing this season, simply because, like I said, I did toy with Callum Wilson because he did it over the full season, and like we said before, for all the obvious reasons, goals win you games, goals get you up the division. But I think Joe Willock brought that and more. I think I've not seen a player in black and white make runs like he does into the box since we had Gini Wijnaldum. Just those late timed runs into the box, always gets on the end of things. Just like a natural instinct that he's got as a midfielder. And I've not seen somebody get about the pitch in the middle of midfield, and he's better than him. But like Mo Diarmi used to get in and about people, close the gaps really quickly. So I think he brought a whole lot more than just those goals. So he's the signing for me that made the most difference, because without him, I fear Newcastle United might have struggled without those goals and without that influence. Worst signing of the season for me has got to be Ryan Fraser. And I agree with everything that Lee said on Jeff Hendrick, because Jeff Hendrick for me didn't come with a lot of expectation, but hasn't delivered a lot either. Whereas Ryan Fraser, I expected a lot more. And I think Steve Bruce has touched upon a lot of the reasons why. And it is an excuse making. I agree with Steve Bruce on this. The lad struggled for pre-seasons. His last 2 pre-seasons have been totally ruined. That last summer he didn't have one. He was training by himself down in Bournemouth. And I think that does make a big difference for a player going into a season when they haven't got that foundation going into the season, because it's always harder to get yourself fit when you're playing and get yourself fit properly in the summer and then keep it ticking over. So I think that's one of the things with me, Ryan Fraser. There are mitigating factors. There are reasons as to why he hasn't, but I did expect him to come in and hit the ground running, creating goals and scoring goals, and we just didn't see enough of that.
Well,
Yep.
I don't disagree with you there, Liam, and it's a good point. I haven't been particularly impressed by him, and when you see miss crucial pre-season, which is unbelievably crucial, if supporters don't realise how important it is to a player. I've experienced it myself. When you have a great pre-season, you fly, and the season just starts great. When you're coming back from a long-term injury, which I've also done, and you're not doing the work that the other lads are doing, your season ahead, it becomes bitter, it becomes stop-start, you pick up little niggles. It's a crucial part. And Ryan Fraser made that choice when he decided not to continue to play for Bournemouth at the end of his contract, which I thought was disappointing. I don't know the lad. He's probably a cracking guy, but from the outside, that looked a really poor decision, both for his club, that would give him an opportunity to try and help them stay in the league, but for himself, because like you said, he came out of contract, he hadn't trained for a while, and that's like missing a pre-season. Your season becomes stop-start, it becomes bitty, and that's what's happened with Ryan Fraser. He's picked up daft niggly injuries, thigh strain here, calf strain, groin, never got a consistent run of games. And I couldn't disagree with what Liam said. There'll be a lot of expectation on his shoulders next season.
Yeah, there will be. Okay, final one for the season review, and then we'll start taking some questions from the people in the chat. Goal of the season for Newcastle United, Lee?
I'm going to go for St Maxim at Burnley for lots of factors. One, it was just typical of him. Outstanding bits of dribbling ability at speed. He does it. He's probably as close as I've seen to Ginola, who goes past people so easily. He can take it in any situation as well. He can take it with space and turn it the fullback and beat him. He can take it in a tight area and use a bit of skill and his body strength and beat him. He can get better and improve like everyone can with his end product. But that day down at Burnley, he made the first one. He made one for Murphy. Outstanding bit of play, and that was a terrific finish. Another lad who I've had on loan before me, managerial travel. So, and obviously his winning goal, and why it was such a fantastic goal, but such an important one. I think it was the first win after that horrendous run of two wins in 20 or 2 wins in 22. And I think we'd got a draw against Spurs, and then we went to Burnley and they were around us. And we played really offensively and played well, and he was inspired in that goal for many different reasons. It was a fantastic goal in itself, but for the reasons why as well, it was important. So I judge them on the importance. You can score a 40-yarder in the top corner, but if you've lost 2-1, it means nothing to me.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And Liam, your goal of the season?
Well, I went with the drama for the game of the season with Southampton. I'm going to go for the drama again with the goal, and it's Joe Willock's goal in 90+4, I think it was, at Anfield, to get a point at a place where Newcastle United never ever get points in the Premier League era. And I think you have to go back to your time probably, Lee, to get a win at Anfield in the Premier League. I'm going for that one. I'm going just because the bit that went before it really makes it. That Newcastle United had done all right. They'd kept themselves hanging in the game. After that first half, they got battered a little bit, but when it got to half time, you thought at least they're in it. And Liverpool sat off a little bit. There was a couple of tactical tweaks made by both managers, and it was a really tight game. And Callum Wilson pops up with that goal as he does off the bench. And you think you're in dreamland. Everybody's celebrating and thinking they've got it. And it's ruled out for one of the most innocuous touches on a hand that you'll ever see. But the new rules is the way they are, that if it comes off your hand, it's not a goal. Agree or disagree. To then all of a sudden you think that's it. You'll not get a point today after all that. To then go and get a point in the end was just an incredible win. Incredible goal in an incredible moment, for me, really.
Yeah, good point as well, mate. And thanks for giving us your opinions on those things, lads. We'll try and take some questions now. We've got about 24 minutes left. And Try and whiz through yours, Liam, so that Lee can get a bit of a word in edgeways.
Nobody wants to hear from me today.
Well,
Nobody
yeah,
wants to hear from me.
but there are a couple of questions. This is Darren saying, is there any truth in Bruce being linked with the Everton job? Well, I'll answer that. I think, yes, there is, but he's been linked by all Newcastle fans on social media. Nothing genuine in that. There's more people linking Rafa Benitez with that as well. But yeah, it's codswallop, I would say, if you want my honest opinion on that. Tom Dixon says, Liam, are Newcastle still confident they can pull off a deal for Celtic centre-half Adja? Obviously linked as potentially the first signing that's going to come through the door, which seemed to have fans in an uproar yesterday. But then I pointed out that Van Dijk was also signed from Celtic, and look what happened with him at Liverpool. So you never know. What's your thoughts on him, Liam?
Well, can I just
go on, Lee? Well, you know him. You know him, Lee.
I signed Christopher the same day I signed Sean Longstaff.
Yeah, you think he'd be a good player, do you, for Newcastle?
He's outstanding.
There we go then. So you're backing up what I'm saying.
He's an outstanding young player, and I've seen a price of 68 million quoted. And there's a player you can improve. He's got, and when I signed him off Brendan was manager of Celtic at the time. We had an agreement, even though we knew he was going to be a centre half. I agreed we were going to play him as a centre midfield player, so he could get used to playing with the ball in tight areas. So when he moved back to centre half, he could be a ball playing centre back. And that's what he done. So he used to play in centre mid with Sean. I had the two of them. And then the odd time I had a couple of injuries and I had to move him back to centre back for a few minutes, like last 10, 15 minutes. He's unbelievable professional. He's captain of Norway when he was still a teenager. He is 6'6", always wants to stay back and get better, do extra. And for the prices that you get quoted, there's a lot of ability there. Yes, there's some rawness around him and there's some rough edges that need smoothed out. But like you said, not many clubs wanted to take that risk on Van Dijk from Celtic because they were saying, oh, the Scottish game's so poor, he doesn't get tested, or this, that and the other. This is a boy who is a potential to come in of those figures and then be worth a hell of a lot more and could be a massive asset to Newcastle United for the assets that he has. Yes, he has some weaknesses, of course, but they can easily be ironed out because there's a player there who wants to be at the very, very top, and he's prepared to do anything in his power to do that. And there is ability. I would definitely be taking him without those type of figures. And I hope you've got some positive news, Liam.
Go on, Liam. Over to you. The pressure's on you now, mate.
The only thing I would say about it, and this isn't anything as a player, because I agree with everything. It's great to have that insight that Lee's got, having had him at Kilmarnock. But I look back on. I worked in Scotland for 5 years as well, and I seen Van Dijk at Celtic, and I remember being at Dens Park one day, and he picked the ball up on the edge of the 18-yard box, strode 40, 50 yards with the ball, and had a shot that whizzed past the post. And you're looking at this lad having gone past 5 players, and you think, wow, he's an unbelievable footballer. But there's always that doubt in your mind. You're looking at it going, well, will he be any good against a challenge, a constant challenge throughout the 90 minutes in a Premier League centre forward in a Premier League setting? And you've got to have that same question mark about Aya as well. You've got to look at him and say, has he got that? Has he got that defensive focus in the 90 minutes? Look, he looks a fantastic player. He's 6'6", as you said, and he's a good footballer. He can bring the ball out. I watched him. Look, last season, I know a lot of people up there. Last season wasn't his best season for Celtic, but it wasn't a very good season for Celtic anyway. I don't think he had a great season. But watching him, I watched the last Old Firm game. I watched it from start to finish, and they conceded 4 goals. He was maybe to blame for one of the goals. But what I was looking for was the player himself and seeing, can he fit into Newcastle United's team? And I'm seeing the Fabian Shaw ability and to be able to stride out with the ball, have the confidence to do that, always with the ball at feet. We had Lejeune who did that kind of thing, and I think he's an upgrade on that kind of player. But he's got the height as well, so you say he's an upgrade on Lascelles potentially as well. So I'm looking at it saying it will be a fantastic signing. But the negative I was going to come on to is, look, there is a confidence. He's a player they've been watching for quite some time. But there are a lot of clubs watching him as well, a lot of clubs on the continent. And Newcastle United haven't got a lot of money this summer. And that's the problem. If you're hassling and about little bits of money here and there you're always at risk of somebody coming in and saying, look, we'll give you that extra 500 grand, we'll give you the extra $1 million. And that's this kind of situation Newcastle United and Steve Bruce finds himself in this summer, that he's got these players that he's looked at and have been looking at all through the summer, all through the season. I've been watching Aya for about 18 months at Celtic, 2 years. They've got a fear of losing these players. If somebody comes in and says, well, we'll just give you straight 9 million, Newcastle United are then they've got to come up with the money themselves. And I'm not sure the money's there this summer, but look, I wouldn't rule it out. I would say he's one at this stage that I think is more likely to walk through the door than not at Newcastle United. But there is always that risk somebody else can come in and gazump them.
Good
Well,
stuff.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I like the fact he's had a very tough season at a club with massive expectations last year. But before that, he's come off the back of a treble and all that. So he's had massive highs and he's had a massive low, because finishing second means nothing in Scotland, and especially when the big rival wins it, it's absolutely the worst thing that could happen. And as I said, he's already captained his country on numerous occasions for a young player. So what he's got in abundance for such a young lad, he's got so much experience. And I think for once in a while, Newcastle are going to have to take a chance back on these Scottish lads, because I did recommend them Kieran Tierney when I was manager of Kilmarnock, when he absolutely destroyed with an attacking left back. He had the quads of a Mark Hughes. And I knew they were represented at the game. And I went into the scout straight after the game. And I said, whatever you do, make sure Newcastle sign him ASAP. The rest's history. And that must have been 2.5 years before you end up going to Arsenal.
Yeah. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Unbelievable. I was there for his debut. He made his Celtic debut against Dundee at Dens Park. That's where I used to work with Dundee. And you could tell even then he come on for 10 minutes and you're like, wow, look at this kid. Like, honestly, he was something else and he's gone on even better. And look at
fitness levels ridiculous, and quads like you wouldn't like. He's got a hammer in both feet because of them quads.
Something about last season, Jeff says, what do you think changed in our midfield in the second half of the season, Lee? And what changes do you think still need to be made?
Well, what changed in the midfield, we had completely different dynamics, because we had a player who could break from deep and break late. The later the run, the better. And that's what Willock gave us. He gave us someone who could, while the opponent's ball watching, he could drift into attacking positions, whether that's to play off a layoff off a striker, or off a long ball over the top if the strikers come short. He could score any kind of goal, by what he done. He scored the fantastic dribble. I know he got a little bit of a ricochet at the end of it at Fulham, but the movement and the skill to beat those few players, he got up into the box and scored some great headers. And then it allowed Shelby to go a bit deeper and get the ball and start their passing. And I just think that we need we've got them. If they want to do it, we've got the long staffs. How badly do they want to do it? They do have those assets. That's what's required. We can't just have three players the same if we're going to play the 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. We cannot have three players identical to each other playing in there. We need all different types to balance off each other. The good thing for me when I played at the start, and I used to like to break forward, I started with Paul Bracewell, who Paul was just sit and keep everything tight at the back and allowed me to bomb forward. I had it later on with other players. Barry Venison done it. Rob Lee, me and Rob used to alternate who would go forward and who would sit. When Bats was played in there and I played alongside Bats, would be the same. You had all these different types of players that allowed you just to go and break forward. I had it at Sunderland with Kevin Ball. Kevin will just sit in there for us, and you cannot have the players the same. So what I had at the end, I had someone who went and broke the line, someone who could go deeper and start the play. But if you're going to have that player, he has to be like a quarterback. He has to be productive. He has to be a forward thinker. I remember the McLaren era. I used to tear my hair out watching the team. Jack Colbeck used to run for the ball in between the two centre-halves. He'd get it off them and he'd pass it square to the fullback. Could the centre-halves not have just done that and Colbeck be 30 yards higher up the pitch to play against their midfield? Because we weren't making any inroads into our opponent. So that's been the biggest thing for me. So Newcastle, I think it's going to be difficult. Would I love them to? I'd love them to sign Willock. It would be an outstanding signing. I don't think in my wildest dreams would think it's going to happen. I think because you'd be questions asked of Arteta and Arsenal if they want to sell him. What's one, if he doesn't rate him, what's his opinion on players? But two, if they do sell him, are they desperate for the money? Another Kroenke is leading Arsenal fans up the path. And as Liam's already touched on, is the money there? Is the money there for, I've seen the figure of 20. I think that might have been the figure when he first signed for Newcastle, 20. I think that might have went up by another 20. When you've scored 7 in 7 games in the Premier League from midfield, that's adding a lot of value to you, I'm telling you.
Is there a deal to be done there, Lee, with potentially Woodman going the other way or, another player? I mean, ASM has been mentioned. There's a lot of noise about ASM. I think he's going to certainly look and see what kind of players are coming in and whether the takeover potentially goes through and whether Bruce is still the manager before he makes any kind of movement. But, is there any scope, do you think, in Woodman potentially going? Would you be upset at that? Because we've got an overspill of keepers as usual.
Well, Freddie's another one with a link to us. I signed Freddie for Kilmarnock as well. Every player we've got here, I'm signing them. I could have had some team if I kept these loan signings together.
Don't worry, they'll all be in Sudan shortly.
I had Ravel Morrison and Jesse Lingard. Wow, what a team I would have had. If I had took any managerial jobs with any money, I could have produced a good team. Listen, you know what I'm going to say to you at the moment?
Go on.
Is Arsenal a step up from Newcastle for St. Maxim? I don't think so. I don't like the way Arsenal play. I don't think they're very strong. I think there is, that they're not as productive as they were going forward. They're certainly as weak as they have been in many years defensively. I think they've got a big rebuilding job to go on, and I'm not sure whether they've got an ownership group who are prepared to fund that change, because that's going to take a lot of money for them to get back to where they were. Sometimes they say the grass isn't always greener, and when all those people were shouting for Arsene Wenger because they were getting bored, we just finished with 4th, they might be having a rethink now with forcing that guy out. They should have, there should have been some kind of development going on. They should have appointed somebody inside the club to learn under Wenger, take over the reins. He'd done some unbelievable things for that football club. Yes, towards the end, things had changed, but you cannot forget what he'd done over a long period of time, because 1 or 2 years, because they had to put money into other assets in the football club, i.e. the building of the new stadium and of the training ground. So I would, if I was advising St. Maxim, I'd be saying, well, I'm not too sure Arsenal from Newcastle is the jump that you need. I think you stay another period at Newcastle and you keep producing on and stay fit. Unfortunately got hit with the COVID, and there'll be more clubs that are playing for higher prizes than Arsenal come for them, I would have thought.
Yeah, okay. Question for Liam. Is the Fun 88 deal over? Because the 3 years have passed. A lot of eagle-eyed Newcastle fans, of course, were looking at the photographs of the pitch being torn up and saw Castoria's badge up there. But, I mean, any news on that, Liam?
Good question, Ginger. I'm going to sound as professional as ever. I don't know. I'll find out for next week. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is on that one, but we'll find out. I'll ask a few questions and see where we're at. But obviously, we know the kit deal is going to be Castoria, and that'll get announced, you would imagine, imminently. I would think, given that they've put the Wolves one out in the last 3 weeks, you would think Newcastle United's probably just waiting for the end of the Puma one. I think that comes to a close this month.
Yep, Toon 2020 will allow you to have the takeover question tonight. He says, Liam, does the UEFA chief coming out and saying no problems with the State Wealth Fund have any bearing on the takeover? Now, this is something I've seen some of the, what I would call pessimists in the anti-takeover brigade come out and actually put out there. And it is quite a positive for the takeover, but, what's your take on it, Liam?
Look, I can't see it being a negative. If you have the chief of UEFA coming out and saying he's got absolutely no problem with that, but I don't necessarily think it's the state ownership that is the biggest problem for the Premier League. I think it always boils back down the way they wanted to reject it. They never did reject it, as we all know. But the way they wanted to reject it was on the grounds of piracy. They wanted to link PIF with the Saudi state. They wanted them to continue to be intrinsically linked, and then they could have turned around and said, "Look, you've been stealing what property for the last X amount of years through all of these different means." And I think that's the biggest issue here, is that we're gonna see that all play out. And I think I get a lot of questions in the week asking me what this means, what that means, what it doesn't. Look, there's going to be a lot of water under the bridge over the next month or two, and hopefully for everybody's sanity, for everybody, so even just the manager, so he can move on, the players, everybody involved at that football club, to be able to just have some closure, whether it's going to happen or not. I think we'll know a lot more probably by August, and I think we need to know a lot more, because it's not healthy for Newcastle United just sort of hanging in the balance, which they have effectively been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Clark, he moved to Sudan to get away from the takeover. That's how bad it is. Jason Carter says, Lee.
Steve, I haven't really got away from it. My honorary president here at the club, he's a Saudi sheikh.
Oh.
Does
he want to buy the club instead?
Before he mentioned how I was enjoying it at Marique, he was asking about Newcastle.
Brilliant. That's great. That's great. So there's Liam's headline tomorrow. Your sheikh wants to buy the club. Speaking of sheikh, Jason Carter says, Lee, you should book the Arabic Elvis impersonator, Hamal Shukub. Very good, Jason. That's as good as the jokes get in Germany, by the way. Billy just says, has the pandemic affected football in the Middle East in a similar way to here, Lee? Obviously, you mentioned earlier no fans. Has anything else been affected?
Yeah, it's very similar, Steve, to the UK, to be honest with you. We've, had restrictions, and what they've done in the league here with our ground and Hilal's ground, and there's another ground which is of a poorer standard in Khartoum. Those three grounds are used to play all the league games, so there's not so much travelling around the country with the COVID. Obviously, no fans allowed. We had a ridiculous incident in the African Champions League. We went to play in Tanzania and played a club called Simba, and the head coach of Simba was head coach here before I took over, so he knew all the players. He knew who the best players were and who were important players. So we got our PCR test to leave to go to Tanzania. Then you have to, 3 days before the game, have another PCR test over there, which is meant to be produced by CAF. You're meant to be with a CAF doctor, which is equivalent to UEFA over here. And that wasn't happening, so we ended up having to go to a local hospital. And then 3 hours before the kickoff, I'd named me starting 11, and I had to 8 of me starting 11 were tested. Well, apparently it tested positive for COVID. so I had to change my team, play lads who hadn't trained in many days because they were injured or youngsters, and put up a great fight. We ended up losing the game, but the lads were superb. I lost 8 of my best players from the starting 11.
God.
And so those lads had to stay back, and they got tested again after the game, and they were negative. So they were negative after the game, and they were negative when we flew to Tanzania. But so there was a little bit of dodgy dealing going on. So you can imagine my press conference after the game wasn't very politically correct, to say the least. A lot of people are just saying welcome to Africa. So yeah.
Brilliant, lad. John Askew says, do you decide the transfers, or is it the club officials?
Well, obviously to know about the local players, I have to lean on some of the staff, but I get the chance to go and watch some of the games of the other clubs. As I said to you, like for example, tomorrow, we play at 7 o'clock, and there's a game on before us because they're using our stadium as one of the venues with the COVID. There's a game on before us at 4, so I'll go early and watch that game, and obviously to watch future opponents, but to see if there's any players there. And as I said, I'm getting a plethora of agents from all over the world contacting us for about players. I was, just in the last window before it shut, we were on the verge of signing a Brazilian left back on loan, but that didn't materialise before the window shut. So I have the final say, but if I need help, which I will, on certain players, you know, I'm not going to come over and know every player in the African continent or whatever, but I'm seeing a lot of games, whether it be through the footage or, you know, in person. And then I decide with the president and the committee. So, you know, I'm off to meet him after this meeting, actually, in 10 minutes. I'm off to his office to have a chat with him about one or two things going forward.
Good stuff. A lot of people asking the same question as Chris and Steve. How's Bobby getting on at Newcastle, mate?
Yeah, he's ready to start on the 1st of July as in his scholarship. So going from boys football to men, which is a massive step. I experienced it myself, and the change is huge. So it's a big opportunity for him, but we understand that it'll take time. There's been some nonsensical stories in the last few weeks published on social media with regards to him, which have been totally out. You know, nothing could be further from the truth. Talking about certain clubs turned down the opportunity to sign him, which has never been the case because he's never been offered to those clubs. You know, that's not allowed. If anyone wanted to be interested in him and showing interest in him, they've got to go through the right channels at Newcastle. So that was one nonsensical story that got brought up. So it's starting. It's very similar to the path I trod in terms of I had to get used to the media intrusion from a young age. Obviously, there's a lot more of it now for Bobby having to handle with social media. But listen, if he's so lucky, if he's as lucky as I was, and he gets that opportunity to play at St. James's Park, full house for the first team, there wouldn't be a prouder person from the area than for me to be in that stadium and see my son pull on the black and white shirt. And I don't think, off the top of my head, I don't know if there's a long list of fathers and sons who've done it. So, of course, that's something that I would want to see. But it's Bobby's decision. It's his future. It's his career. And we've just got to see how it pans out.
Yeah, here, mate, and wish him all the best from us at NUFC Matters Me in particular. Life Goals has a question for Liam. He says, any news on Willems, the Wigan striker, and Josh King? So any transfer news in general, Liam?
Josh King's not one that I've heard mentioned recently. I know there was a little bit of mention of it in January and previous to that as well. The Wigan striker, Joseph, I think he's called, Kyle Joseph. I think that's one that will go through this summer. Speaking to people who've seen him play, I think he works really hard, a workhorse up front, has definitely got ability. He could be one that really sort of improves with some proper, you know, not that he's had good coaching, it's not that he had bad coaching, but, you know, in a different environment in Newcastle, with different opportunities at a higher level, I think he could come on. Willems is a funny one. I don't see Jethro Willems coming through the door unless Matt Ritchie leaves. And I think Matt Ritchie's one of those ones where he's a footballer that's always been a first-team player throughout his career. And last season was the first season in his career that he was not a first-team player. And I think that's been playing on his mind a lot. He's a player who wanted to go back down to the South Coast. But I think if he was guaranteed to start week in, week out in Newcastle, he would have stayed and wanted to stay here. But I think that's an interesting one. It's one we'll have to watch out the summer is Ritchie goes, Willems comes in. And one point I will make on that one is that if you're looking, I wouldn't want to lose Ritchie because I think he brings a real positive energy, a combative, you know, competitive energy into the team. And I think you need that. But what they're probably looking at is they're going to have to do a bit of boxing clever with their transfers this summer. And if they can maybe bring a Willems in for nothing and get rid of a Ritchie to Bournemouth for $5 million to bring that $5 million back into the pot, it might be a deal that they look to do, especially with a player potentially looking at the squad saying, am I definitely going to play here week in, week out, and wanting to potentially move as well. And that's no slight on Matt Ritchie, by the way. He's a top-class professional. He wants to play for Newcastle United, but the lad just wants to play football. He's done it throughout his career. He's never been a second choice, no matter where he's went, and he doesn't want to be now.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll finish on the England squad. Lee, you've had time maybe to see it, I'll presume. Gareth Southgate's England squad. The unlucky 7, obviously, that were phased out today. It was a strange way of doing it with everybody else announcing the squads for last week. But yeah, I mean, what was your take on that England squad, and how do you think they'll do at the Euros, says Keith?
Well, unfortunately for Gareth, but great for English football. I think the delay was down to having 3 teams competing in the 2 European finals.
Yeah.
And he had to see if anyone picked up serious injuries, etc. You know, he already had the issues with Maguire as such. So, hey, listen, what a tough position for the England manager to be in. We've got some unbelievable young players. You know, there was talk of this Trent Alexander-Arnold being left out. I mean, wow. If he was Brazilian, they'd be going crazy for him. We've got to keep faith with these lads. He was another one. We touched on it with young Christopher Asia before with Celtic. Trent Alexander-Arnold, when Liverpool won the league, outstanding assists, fitness levels, quality set play deliveries. Yes, he hadn't reached his own high standards last season, and Liverpool didn't themselves, but he's still done some fantastic things, and he had a blip which young players do, but he's still a brilliant footballer. And Gareth had this choice. He's picked 4 right backs in his squad. Look at the potential he had with the number 10s he could have. Maddison, Mount, Foden. Wow. I mean, to leave some... I've just been telling you there what it's like in a manager's scenario, saying to the players, give us a problem when I've got to pick the 11. I mean, Gareth had that in so much in terms of having to pick this squad for the Euros, and the quality of player who hasn't even made the squad that I've seen. Ollie Watkins, fantastic season. James Ward-Prowse, Lingard. It's had a brilliant time at West Ham. It's gut-wrenching. It's heartbreaking for them. It'll be hard. I'll tell you who'll be feeling terrible. Gareth Southgate. Be feeling awful. I've had to go through it myself, and I tell you, this part of management is the worst part. I've been part of a process when I've had to tell young players and other players are not getting contracts. It's the worst day of a manager's career, telling someone you're breaking their heart, you're crushing their dreams. You've got to try and, you're giving them that awful news, trying to keep their spirits high and bounce back for the next time. So, tough call. He's picked a great squad. I expect us to be challenging for the major trophies with the players. I had it in the May era when we got talking about in the golden generation, but that can never be given as a title to that group because they never delivered on the big stage. This group can, without a doubt, and I sincerely hope they do.
Great stuff. Liam, your thoughts on the squad?
There's obvious quality not in that squad, and it's one thing that I've seen all week on social media is people saying, "Oh, the biggest mistake you'll ever make is not pick that player. The biggest mistake you'll ever make is not pick that player." Let's just stop all the negativity, man. The ball hasn't been kicked yet. Just give the bloke a chance. He's went and picked a really good squad, arguably the best squad that's been available probably in a generation of players. Probably going back 20 years before you've had any kind of players of this kind of level in this kind of depth. Look, I think it's a really good squad. I'll look beyond it and say, look, it's a shame I really wanted to see Mason Greenwood get in that squad because I think he's such a natural centre forward. Can finish with both feet, but he's got that injury, and like you said, Lee, it's these ones that have had to watch out for. Manchester United were playing right till the last day of the season, and you have to watch out for these players, and he's one that drops out with injury. But I can't help but watch this squad, and I think back to when the tournament should have been played last year, and I look at one player, and it's such a dilemma because he's just picked up a Champions League winners medal, having not been in the squad in the final, by the way. Tammy Abraham, for example, probably would have started last year. What would have been the first sub in the squad last summer. He's not even in the conversations this year. He stayed at Chelsea. He's probably got a medal that he might not get elsewhere. But was that really the right call for that player? Should he have gone elsewhere? Could he have gone and played? And he probably would be in an England squad that might go and win a Euros, might win a World Cup next year. You never know. There's players like that even when you look beyond the obvious quality, there's so much depth there. There's probably 6 or 7 players in almost every position, probably apart from the centre halves, really, when you look through the whole squad. It's a fantastic position to be in for Gareth Southgate in English football.
Yeah, it is. And Lee, there we go. Yeah, I mean, great to have you on, Lee. You're in.
I think the president must have cut the lecky off.
It's time to go. It's time to go.
He's looking at the watch, isn't he?
He's looking at the watch. Big shout out to our sponsors as always. Spider VPN for all your internet security. Just Google Spider VPN. They can protect your passwords, etc. Skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Also a big shout out to John at qtechshop.co.uk and to John at Jab Signature as well. Make sure you donate donate to the food bank. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. That's the match day bucket, but you can still donate all the way through the summer to make sure that the food bank is supported. And you also enter into the raffle for that watch, which is drawn on the 5th of August. So don't forget, please keep supporting Newcastle's food bank. And also a big shout out to everybody in the chat. Sorry we couldn't get all your questions tonight, but as you would expect, it was always going to be a busy one having Lee on to chat as well about his fantastic new job. Also want to say, if you're a first time visitor at the channel, click the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right hand corner and subscribe. Hit the like button and comments, and click the share button as well. And the new food bank t-shirt is up. It's a one-off. NUFC Matters, Everything Is My Fault t-shirt is now on my Twitter account, and we've already got a bid straight in for that. £50 already been bid for that t-shirt. Get onto me Twitter at Steve Wraith, make a bid. We'll draw that on Friday night show, The Three Amigos. Lee, any message for the Newcastle fans back home, or your family and friends?
Yeah, just enjoy the sun. I've heard it's a baking 21-22. Just double it and add a little bit more on, and that's what I've got.
Lee, you're looking great, mate. Take care. We'll keep in touch, and we'll get you back on over the next few weeks. Good luck with the game as well. Take care.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
See you.
And last, but by no means least, Liam, where can people find your work?
As ever, just have a look down here at Liam J Kennedy 23. Work for the Shears Gazette. If you like the sort of stuff that I do on here, check out my work. It's all in there, all in my Twitter account, and give us a subscribe as well. We're working on a subscription system at the Gazette. We're not into all this clickbait rubbish you get elsewhere. We're just dealing proper facts, proper news, proper analysis. So yeah, if you like what we do, it's about 35 quid for a year's subscription. You get all the match day stuff and all the bits in between as well. So yeah. You can all just have a look here and you'll find out all the details for that.
Great stuff, mate. Are you going back out to get the last rays of sun?
I think I am, yeah. I think I'm going to go. It's moved from the back to the front, and I'm going to go get a little bit more. Yeah, but wouldn't it? Because it'd be gone by the weekend, no doubt.
It will, mate, it will. Well, I'm back tomorrow night with the Retro Squad. We are looking at Newcastle's games against Wigan Athletic. Yes, that's been a challenge as well. See you all 6 o'clock tomorrow. Take care. Good night. Cheers, Liam.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back